Welcome, everyone. Today we have Ali Spittel, and this is the third time that she's on my YouTube channel, but she's doing something in reverse because usually I do like this kind of interview, and then we do like other things with other people. Then we have done the in action video, so we're doing like in the opposite direction. But finally, we're here to also to listen to her story. How are you, Ali?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. How do you pronounce your name, Ali or Ellie?
Allie.
Ellie.
Yeah, it's like Alie, just my parents
Perfect.
spelled my name differently.
Okay, perfect. And Ali is a lead and developer advocate, as a developer advocate at AWS Studio. Hey there, I'm the Usman Ansari. Yeah, because I want to know a little bit about her background and how she get step into tech. And then we'll talk about a topic which is very important for me. We'll know why during the session. I'm not gonna give any spoiler to her. So Ellie, a little bit about your background and how did you step into tech? I'm always curious about this kind of story of everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So I started later than a lot of people. But also earlier than a lot of people too. So I went to a high school in the middle of absolute nowhere in New Hampshire in the United States, very, very small town. And my high school didn't really have like a computer lab or computer science classes or anything like that. So going into college, I had no idea what coding was. And then in college, you have to take these like prerequisite classes. And the only class that counted as a math class that fit into my schedule was a computer science class. And I thought computer science was like how to format Microsoft Word documents and use Excel and things like that. Like I had no idea what computer science was. But on the first day, they had a printed out piece of paper and you were supposed to type all the code on the piece of paper into your Python terminal. And I was just like, whoa, like what is happening? This is wild. This is too much for me, but this is really cool. And over that semester, I just thought that building games and completing these assignments was just the most fun thing, where I got to use my creativity, but I also got to use some logic skills and a little bit of basic math. And so I completely like fell in love with it. And then I did pretty well in the class, so they asked me to come back and assistant teach it the next semester. And so I did that, and I also decided to double major in computer science. So the next semester, I took a C++ data structures and algorithms class, and anybody in the chat who did CS in college probably knows that that's the weed out class, the first like really difficult one that all the CS majors do, and it was brutal. I remember spending an all-nighter because one of the first assignments was building a Sudoku solving algorithm, which like years later is still not the easiest problem to solve. Like it's pretty difficult, especially for a second computer
Yeah.
science class and especially in a language like C++. And so I had to work myself to crazy extents during that semester in that C++ class. And I just lost a lot of confidence. I ended up with a pretty good grade in it, but I was just like, I'm working too hard. Like I'm obviously like not good enough at this coding thing to do it. And so I should not be doing this anymore. And so I kind of quit, but then I got my first, real adult job. I was doing an internship in a totally unrelated field. I was doing like data analysis work, so basic Excel. And I was like, oh, hey, like I can automate a lot of this using those basic Python skills that I have. And I did that. And then they ended up recommending me for a software engineering job. So I went from being totally doubting myself and thinking that I couldn't code to being a professional software engineer in like a couple months. So I ended up leaving college early. I did get my degree, but I started just working full time as a software engineer, actually as a teenager still, and got some pretty good early experience. And that was really my foray into tech. So I was a software engineer for a while, then I was a teacher for a while, and we can talk about that for sure.
Yeah, so basically you already experienced the two states of a programmer. I'm a god, I know nothing. So you basically was
Yeah,
experienced already
exactly.
these two
Exactly. Yeah,
binary
that's one of
states.
my biggest things that I used to tell my students on the first day when they were learning how to code was that I think people think of learning as this linear trajectory, as you start somewhere and then you incrementally learn, but it's really this cycle of peaks and valleys and the set of like optimism and pessimism at different parts and almost giving up or giving up, and then finally you see the light at the tunnel and you're able to solve the thing. So that's something that anybody new should keep in mind, that it's not going to be this linear trajectory. You're going to have lots and lots of ups and downs, and actually it should be that way, because the science says that if you're right 100% of the time when you're learning something, that learning is not going to be effective. You're not going to be actually learning that much, and your brain actually learns better after failure. So when you're learning something new, you should actually be successful around 85% of the time, so that you're not totally doubting yourself and wanting to quit, but that other 15% of the time you should be failing. And there are all sorts of actual research studies about this and all that. I'm not just like making this up to make people feel good. It's actually the science behind learning is you should be failing about 15% of the time.
Yes, absolutely. Otherwise, it means that you are basically just doing something that you already know 100%. You get bored very soon. So I like this. I like this a lot. Okay, nice. So, okay, so let's talk about teaching, because I don't know if you know this, but both of my parents are teachers. I've been a volleyball coach for about 20 years. So I've been like a teacher for all my life. I've also taught math, physics, chemistry. So, and then I stopped teaching when I became a full stack developer. So one of the reasons why I started become active on social media and also doing this kind of stuff is because I was missing this part of myself, probably somewhere, about teaching. So for me, teaching is like a mission. So I'd like to know more about your experience. Thank you.
Yeah, totally, totally. So again, I was thinking in college how I was double majors. So I was like doing writing as one of my majors through political science, and then also uh, computer science. But then also I was a minor in education, which was the most that my college had. And so I did my like shadow teaching semester in middle school doing math, and was able to like implement hour of code within their school and all that. So I started my education journey then. And then when I was a software engineer full time, I had the opportunity to guest lecture sometimes at a coding boot camp to kind of do a little bit of recruiting, but also teach about data science libraries. And I was pretty heavy into data science when I started out in tech. And then they ended up offering me a full-time teaching job. And I definitely weighed it against staying as a software engineer and keeping that traditional route. But I decided that I really wanted to merge my different interests and teach code. And so for 3 years, I taught full time at a coding boot camp, and I started just like a normal lead instructor and worked my way up to faculty lead. And it was such an amazing experience to see students go from hello world to I actually have former students on my team at AWS now. So it's really full circle and really awesome to see that growth. Um, and so many of my former students are like senior software engineers now as well. So after that, I briefly went back to normal software engineering, and then I transitioned more into developer advocacy, actually only about a year and a half ago. So it was something that I was doing more as a hobby, but then transitioned into doing full time. So that's a little bit of my teaching story. And I feel like developer advocacy, and you can attest to this, I'm sure as well, that is a lot of
Yeah.
teaching, and it's programming and it's product and it's teaching. It's all those different fields put together.
Yeah, and I think that I've heard the term developer advocacy the first time by you. I think we were, or it was one of the first times that I've heard, because before joining Twitter, I never heard about this term. But the way they say Ali's energy is really a breath of fresh air. I think
Oh,
she's at 10% of her true power. So nice, nice. Yeah, absolutely. Nice. I like that. By the way, You can also check her on in her social media in the description below. I'll also post some links soon. You can also check the other two videos that we made together. Once with Quincy Larson, Genji Jones, Colby Fayok, and I think it's enough. And then we have also made another one on how you can use AWS Amplify Studio. So yes, we have already collaborated a couple of times. Maybe we'll do this even more in future, because I've seen that she is super active on the DevRel and advocacy topic. So we have some stuff that we can talk about. Amazing, Ali. Okay, nice. If you have any questions, by the way, you can drop them in the chat, of course. Okay, so let's talk about the title and the main topic, which is like teaching and learning. So, for example, let's talk a bit about the learning process, because as a developers, I think that we can't ignore this. For some jobs, maybe you can ignore. Like, I don't want to learn new things anymore. Just want to do my job. I just want to go to my house and relax. I don't think if this is possible for the developer. This can be a good thing, a bad thing. So, what's your idea about learning especially for developers?
Totally. So I very much agree with that. I think that is one of the biggest things that is an indicator of success in a developer, is somebody that is excited to learn and wants to keep expanding their knowledge and just having really a growth mindset about wanting to grow and keep expanding all the things that they can do. So very much agree with that. I think the first thing is being able to self-teach, because no matter your learning journey, you're going to be self-teaching. Like you said, this industry evolves so fast. So even if you learn something in a classroom, you are going to have to learn something different down the road for your job. And that technology that you may have learned in a classroom may be obsolete a few years down the road. Like, I learned Python 2 first in my CS classroom, and now I have led teams through Python 3 migrations, and it's very much a part of the job that you have to keep updating yourself. And the world of JavaScript is so different as well. I went from like a jQuery engineer to React and Angular and Vue and all these other fun things. And now it's like Next.js and Remix are the things that I'm really excited about. So there is always going to be so much to learn. So make sure that you're teaching yourself how to self-teach. And that's, I think, what really sets a good coding program apart, is that they're teaching you how to teach yourself. And that was always one of my philosophies when I was teaching at a coding bootcamp, is that I am teaching these people how to code, yes, but more so than that, I'm teaching them how to teach themselves how to code. That's going to be much more valuable in their jobs than just learning how to do X, Y, and Z. So one thing that I would say is that I see this all the time, and I did this as well when I was learning, is that shiny object syndrome is really a thing in the tech industry. Of there are all these new frameworks out there, and you're always going to see something new on social media. And yes, you're going to have to learn new things eventually, but when you're, at least in the beginning of your journey, being able to write hello world in 20 different languages is not all that valuable, but being able to build a full application in one language is going to transfer over to those 20 languages. So the difference between writing an app in Python or an app in Ruby, yes, there's totally differences in it, but that fundamental knowledge is going to transfer for you, and you're not going to have to start from scratch each time. So go deep first. Don't just see this new thing and say, hey, you know what, Python's getting kind of hard anyways, so I'm just going to dump it and now learn how to do basic JavaScript instead. Really plan what you want to learn. And I think a really good way of planning what you want to learn is looking at job recs in your area. So if you're in New York City, for example, the tech stack that's really hot might be different than the one that's in San Francisco. And the same is true for like maybe the middle of the country, where maybe we're a little bit behind where the coasts are. I live in Colorado, so I'm like right in the middle of the United States. So I'm not making fun of anybody, speaking about my own area. But this is something that I think is really beneficial, to look at those job requirements and see what they're asking for, and try to learn a tech stack that is going to be making you job ready, if that is your goal. And that's not everybody's goal. Some people's goal, like my partner, Andrew, he's right now teaching himself to code just as a beneficial thing to have on his resume. He doesn't want to be a full-time software engineer or anything like that. So that's a perfectly valid goal as well.
But we never know, because he can start and then jump in the
Yeah,
rabbit
and then
hole.
it can
You never
spiral.
know. Let's make it cool.
Yeah, but that's my recommendation is when you're starting is to work backwards from what people are looking for from a career perspective. So stay on track. Don't get that shiny object syndrome. Have a plan for what you need to learn. Have maybe an outline of the different skills that are really, really valuable. I know when I was brand new software engineer, I used to hoard Udemy courses. So I would have them on every single topic you could imagine, like game development in C#, .NET, all the different CSS frameworks, all the different JavaScript frameworks. I didn't need all of that. That wasn't something that was necessary for my job. And yes, learning things for the sake of learning things is great, but I think I was stressing myself out and being like, I need to know absolutely everything. And no software engineer does know everything. We know a tiny little sliver that helps us to be good at our jobs, but we don't know the whole breadth of everything. It's just impossible. There's too many languages and technologies out there.
Yeah.
So that's the start of the journey, I would say.
Yeah, I just want to say that the rumors that I have about 100 Udemy courses and I've completed just 10% of them is totally false. I just want to say this.
Yeah, I don't even think I've done 10%. It's wild. I used to hoard them. You know those sale emails that they used to have? I'm sure they do this still. I've just unsubscribed, but they have like a sale like every single day on something. And so then you can just rack up these $5 30-hour courses, which is awesome.
And I
But
feel so bad for those two people who buy a course for $200. I really feel so bad.
Who are they?
Nice.
Yeah. That's so
Nice,
funny.
Pratim. Yeah. I co-hosted the Devil around the round table with her and Kilo Loco. Pratim.
Oh,
Okay,
cool.
nice, perfect. By the way, if you have any question, just drop this in the chat. This is really an amazing interview, I can say, or talk podcast. I never know how to define this. Okay, so let's talk about the connection between teaching and learning, because I think that they are strictly coupled. So what's your idea? Why are they so coupled, especially for developers?
Totally. So I like to say that if you can't teach something to somebody else, you probably don't understand it well enough yourself. You should be able to explain a relatively complex concept in a way that other people can understand and be able to break that down and explain it in an understandable way to them. And I think that that's one of the most valuable exercises that you can perform as while you're learning. And I think it's really helpful in a job context as well. So there are some really awesome people who talk about learning in public. So Sean Wing or Swix on social media, he's one of my former coworkers, and I always learned so much from him. But he's a huge advocate for learning in public and sharing what you're learning. So you can send out tweets like, today I learned X and Y, or put out a blog post about your experience building X and Y. And I think that's another really important learning tip, is to not just do tutorials, also build actual things, because you can get in this funnel of just doing tutorial after tutorial after tutorial and never moving past that. So I just wanted to put that little side note in there. But learn in public, share what you're learning. And I know that can be a really scary thing, especially for people in maybe groups that face more harassment in tech. But I would say that getting used to that and building up that muscle memory can be really valuable when you're job searching, because you're not just showing a sample app, but you're showing how you built it. You're telling the narrative. You're really showing a hiring manager that you understand what you're making as well. And that will be so valuable for interviews as well, that you'll have this pre-canned story that you already wrote down in text that you can share with somebody. So I would say to really try that. Yes, that's what I would say about teaching and learning, is that oftentimes teaching something that you're learning to somebody else can be extremely valuable for you. But Honestly, also for those people that are learning from you too. Sometimes somebody in a beginner mindset is going to be more empathetic to a learner, and they're going to understand those pitfalls, the things that they struggled with, and be able to explain that. Whereas somebody who's been using the tool for 20 years doesn't have that same empathy with the difficulty of getting started with something. You're too far removed from it. And that's natural. But
Yeah,
makes it so
yeah.
that beginners should teach.
Yeah. Maybe you just need to remove maybe that initial awkwardness. So like it's a bit hard maybe in the beginning. For example, now I'm applying this to Web3. I'm learning stuff. So in the beginning, you basically know nothing. You are like the person who just step into the gym for the first time, a bit out of shape. Maybe you don't know even this exercise how to do that. But after a while, you start also teaching to someone else, and I've also experienced this as a coach. Like when there was a new player, the let's say the last when were like the newest one before, they were more likely to teach to them because they knew all the problems when you're just getting started. So yes, totally agree with this. I also apply this from sport and other stuff. Yes.
Totally,
Nice.
totally.
Nice.
I think the first step of learning is like uninformed optimism, where you don't know how much you don't know. And so you're really excited about it and like, this is gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna learn this so well. And then you start learning a little bit more. You're like, oh no,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really, this is tough.
Yeah, and for example, I see that almost everyone, or maybe I'll say some people, they claim to be an expert. Like after they read an article, they already claim themselves an expert. I have the opposite approach. Like I say, like I know nothing, even if
Yeah,
after years, maybe I know something at some point. I can share some ideas, but I think it's always important to be humble and say, and also be. It's not more about like
totally.
looking good on social media. It's more like to be honest with yourself. If you're honest, like say, okay, so I need to learn some stuff. I think that it's better. Hey, Ritik from LinkedIn, nice
Yeah.
because.
I
Mhm.
see that so much on social media where somebody is like, I started learning machine learning last week. Now I'm an expert on it. Ask me anything about it. It's like, oh, wow, that escalated quickly.
No, yeah, I think I am a Docker captain, but I don't claim myself as a Docker expert even after 7 years, 6 years after
Yeah,
learning that, because I always learn new things every single day. So probably I'll never claim myself as an expert in nothing. Okay, nice. Okay, so can you talk a little bit about blogging? Because I think that I for one of your talks about blogging. Of course, blogging is content creation, so maybe some people in the comments. I think I also started blogging because I read some of your tweets or somewhere. I don't know. It
oh,
was
cool.
about 2 years ago, but my memory is so bad that I can't remember anything. So how can you maybe you can spend maybe some time talking about maybe how can blogging help you? So like we take this as an example, of course, every kind
Yeah,
of content creation. Okay.
totally. So I think blogging is one of the most accessible ways to start content creation. I think YouTube and podcasting, which are both things that I do now, have a little bit of a higher learning curve and they're harder to edit after the fact too. So if you get something wrong, it's much more difficult to go back and fix a YouTube video than it is a blog post. So that's where I always recommend that people start, is to start blogging, start writing, get your thoughts down on paper, and that will help you if you want to get into the other content creation points in the future, because you're going to have to like write scripts or whatever as well if you get into any of those down the road. But I think writing is such an important professional skill in general, and clear communication, so that you can really get to the point of what you want or what you need or what you're trying to demonstrate to somebody. It's a really valuable skill to build up, and nobody's perfect at first whatsoever. It's going to be a thing that you build up over time, just like uh, coding in general. So I started blogging because I went to teaching full time and I was nervous that I wasn't going to keep my programming skills as up to date as I would as a full time software engineer. So I challenged myself to learn new things and then teach them to other people through blogging. And my blog, I think, was pretty rusty at first. You can check out this really old blog post. They're still up online. I think my first
I
one was
will.
about how much I didn't like writing Elm, which is this functional programming language for the front end. It's actually pretty cool, but there's some developer experience things that I would make different choices on. But those were my back in the day kind of blog posts, and I just was getting the muscle memory of writing and putting my thoughts on paper and getting them out there. Um, and I think blogging is so valuable for yourself as well as for your readers too, because I know that I come back to my old blog posts all the time and, look up my process for something, but also getting into the practice of putting things in words and making sure that you can truly explain something clearly. Like I said earlier, really the best way to tell if you know something well is if you can explain it to somebody else in simple terms and they can understand it. And I think blogging is a really great practice to start building up doing that and having the ability to teach that. It's also a great format for learning in public, and also something that as a hiring manager in a lot of different formats at this point, it's really valuable to see from a candidate as well.
Nice. Okay, so now let me play the devil's advocate. Like, why should they start blogging? There are already so many blogs out of many topics. Why should they start that? So, and how many times do you get this question every week?
No. That's a great question. So I personally dealt with this when I was starting blogging, and I can tell you like a personal story of this. I had been a React developer for years, and I was like, oh, I want to write a blog post teaching React. But at that point in history, it was like 2018, I think. So there were 1,000,001 introductory React tutorials at that point. Everybody and their mother had a React tutorial, basically. But I decided to write it anyways. And at the time, it was my most read blog post. I think now it has over 200,000 reads on just that one blog post, because you just teach something differently than somebody else would. Everybody is going to have a different perspective on how they explain something, and that's going to resonate for different people. And so it's still valuable to put it out there, even if it's just for yourself. I always say that even if nobody reads your blog post, somebody still benefited from it, and that's you from just writing it down. And so it's a great side effect if other people benefit from it as well. It makes you a lot of friends and is great for professional networking. But even beyond that, just writing for yourself to take your notes and then putting it out there for other people to see is so valuable.
Yeah, and just let me add just one something on top. For example, if you are a non-native speaker, also writing something in English can also be another exercise for you, for yourself, as I did for myself. I started the content creation by blogging because maybe it's like I had not to put my face on something, so it's easier also to start. For example, this is how I started, and then you'll find your way. So just
Totally. That's
just
a really good input too. And also, if you're insecure about your writing, which is very, very natural no matter your writing background, is that there are automated tools now that help with this. So Grammarly is one that I always use to check like grammar and to make sure that everything fits the tone that I want it to fit. Also, the Hemingway editor automatically checks to see if your sentences are clear and understandable. So those are tools that I would recommend for anybody starting blogging, just as like a sanity check. You can also always ask somebody else that you're close to proofread something or give you feedback or whatever. But I think using those automated tools make it so that you don't have to hassle anybody else, and you can get a pretty good start.
And I use Grammarly. This doesn't save me from all my typos on Twitter, but still it helps. Sometimes
Yeah.
it helps. Sometimes it helps a bit. Nice, perfect. So, okay. Now, so I would like to maybe spend a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes, about especially for beginners, because like this podcast is especially about like beginners, people who would like to start, maybe the people that are blocked, maybe they've also written a blog post, but it's like in the draft. They say maybe I'll finish this tomorrow or next week. So, what sort of tips can we give, especially to for beginners, let's say like wannabe content creators, and also because maybe they are scared. Sometimes I see some crazy stuff on Twitter about some gatekeepers, something that maybe I would like not to even start. But what can you say like about positive stuff about these people to help them?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a couple of self-doubts that I see a lot with new writers, like, nobody's gonna read my posts, and I think I said my response to that already, but, like, so what? You've already written it, you've already put the effort into this, you still have benefited from that process, and so just share it out there. Maybe somebody else benefits from it, maybe they don't. Worst case, I mean, somebody says something mean, but that is the internet, and it sucks. I hate that that is the reality of it, but especially when you're starting out, I think that usually the community is more positive, and you can optimize that for that too. Like Dev2 has really good filtering for comments, and you can report things and they'll remove them really quickly as well. So that's a good place. The community tends to be relatively positive on there as well. So it could be a good place to start out. I think another self-doubt is that I'm not experienced enough to write this. And I think I kind of said earlier that beginners can often be the best people to teach something because they have the empathy of going through that process themselves recently. But you can always preface it too, like, hey, I just started learning X and Y. Here's my process. Here's what I learned. And yeah, maybe somebody will comment down at the bottom correcting something, but that's the beauty of a blog post, is that you can edit it. It's not stuck in time. You can always keep working on it down the road. And you can actually learn a lot from that too. I know that I used to write about like learning new things. Like I wrote about learning Golang, and I was patching a bunch of other tutorials to learn myself. And somebody commented down at the bottom, hey, there's actually an easier way to do this now. And awesome. Like that makes it so that my blog post is more relevant for other people, but it also makes it so that I now know how to do this in the easier, more updated way. And I would have just done the other way that wasn't as good if I hadn't written that blog post.
Yeah, if those would be the bad comments that we would have to deal with, that would be the heaven, basically, because that means that the person has taken their time to read the post, find something, and also find the time to reply and try to help us. It's like correcting a teacher. If the teacher has no problem, they say, okay, no problem, thank you, because you are helping other people to improve. So I never had this problem.
Yeah, totally. I also think another thing that people worry about is like getting a detail wrong, and that happens. Like everybody's going to publish something at some point with a typo in it or a bug in your code or something along those lines. And again, you just take that feedback into account, and that's the beauty of blogging compared to YouTube or podcasting, is that you can edit it right then and there. It's not stuck there. You have the ability to update it.
Yeah, I have a funny story if you want to listen that 30 seconds. And I think one of my most successful posts, like thousands of views, once I got a DM like, Francesco, in this line, you wrote ASS instead of AS. Maybe that was a typo. I said, yes, thank you so much. You saved my life.
That's awesome. That's so funny. It's so funny. Classic.
Yes, I know, but this happened. But thank you. I always thank that person who corrected me. So I don't know if never this ever happened to you, but for example, also, some DM, or maybe I don't know, maybe you had the title spelled wrong, because we know some we should do things like calm, but sometimes we are in a hurry. Maybe we make some mistakes on the thumbnail. I think it happened to me also, like to write like the wrong title, maybe because you wrote the article, then you have like to post the title or the subtitle, and you made maybe some mistake, or maybe you post something wrong. But as you said, you can always edit your article. In worst cases, you can even delete that. Suggest to never do that. But let's say, this is just more like an incentive to start. Let's say I've never, I think, removed one of my articles. And yes, what I usually do, I don't know if you agree with that. It's like I try to don't focus or just like I have to create this viral article. I think about like, okay, I want to explore React, so I make like a series maybe about React, and then I'll see. So maybe don't focus on just one single article that has to be the best in the world, but like it's more about your process of learning, let's say,
Yeah.
a topic. What do you think?
Definitely, definitely, and I think that's especially valuable when you're, uh, trying to get your first job in the field, is having that documentation of how you learned and the different things that you were learning and the things that you built and how you did that. I think that that's really, really great to show. And also, it acts as a feedback mechanism for the people writing the thing too, or writing the tool that you're writing the tutorial on. What are the friction points? What are the things that were difficult for a beginner to learn? What are the things that we can make smoother? I know in my job now, I work on a product team, and having that from a new developer would be worth its weight in gold, because then I could improve that. I could be like, hey, this is a issue with our product and we should make it easier for beginners to learn. Or, hey, this is an issue in our documentation. We should make it so that that is smoothed over for the next person learning.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So I have one question. For example, are you currently working on something course? What are you currently working on?
Yeah, I think I have 3 courses scheduled to come out in, like, Q2 of this year, so
Crazy.
lots of different courses on different things. I have one on React, which is a little bit hush-hush right now, but I'm really excited about that, and then I have 2 on the product that I work on, so
So
yeah.
now I feel bad that I've asked her to come on this.
No, no,
On
no, no,
this.
no, no,
But
it's all about balancing all these different things.
okay, so just to be forgiven, now I'll share the Twitter handle of Ellie. So please follow her, help me out, because we know that you are busy and we value your time. Yes, thank you. So okay, so courses. Okay, about other types of content creation. So I don't know, like, but will those like be video courses?
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
Interesting.
personally like doing courses that are both video and written. So this research actually does not support heavily the idea of different people having different learning styles. So I hear this all the time of people being like, I'm a really kinesthetic learner, or I'm a really audio-based learner, auditory learner, visual learner. And yes, different people have different preferences, but actually the science backs that most people learn the best if they learn the same topic using multiple modalities. So if you learn something in a visual manner, but then you watch a YouTube video on it afterwards, or you listen to a podcast discussing it, or you listen to a lecture of a teacher, and then obviously always you should build something yourself as well as a developer. That's going to make the knowledge stick. If you don't do that, that's the knowledge is just gonna kind of leave. So it's really important to make sure that you're building things. But I think that's an important thing to note, is that different people do like different learning in different ways, but honestly, the best way to learn is to learn the same information in multiple different ways. And so this is something that I always try to integrate whenever I am building something. So whenever I write a blog post, for example, I use it as a script for a YouTube video, because I've already written what essentially would be a outline for a YouTube video. Might as well get double as far for that work. And it's also going to serve different learners and potentially even help that the same learner. So a learner could watch that YouTube video, but also have the blog post open in another tab and follow through on it, or something along those lines. So that's something that I really, really work on doing when I'm building content.
Yes, and I think this helps in two ways, because it helps you, content creator, maybe to have a life. I don't talk about social life, but at least I talk about the real life. So like eat, sleep, and having some maybe more time, maybe if you want to relax just a bit, maybe some minutes during the day, and also from a consumer point of view, maybe if they like your style, but they can. Learn maybe in a different way, because we learn in different ways. I've been a coach, so I know that sometimes some people are attracted by something. Some people, they need an example, otherwise they don't get. Some people, if they don't read the theory, they don't even step into exercise. So we learn in different ways. It depends on the background, how we have learned in school. So I know that we have different backgrounds, and
Totally.
maybe this is also another incentive to start creating content, because maybe you will have a style where when different people can resonate, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So you're gonna have a different way of explaining something or teaching something, and it might really, really resonate with somebody. You never know who you're gonna help. I think it's also really important when you are creating content to try to integrate as many different types or preferences for learning as possible. So, trying to teach the same information in a visual way, maybe through a diagram, and then have a code pen to show off the code snippet, and then have a paragraph explaining it, and then have a YouTube video embedded at the top to show them it in tutorial long form. All of those different ways are going to help build a full learning experience. And uh, I know that content creators can feel like they're repeating something, but the more you repeat something, the more it's likely to stick with somebody. And so change it up to keep your learner interested, but it's really valuable to have the same information presented in multiple ways.
Yes, and yeah, and I really like this kind of thinking, like our content, like that it's alive. It's not something that is static, maybe written in stone and that's there. Especially for developers, because something can change in a different
Yeah.
version, or maybe you want to change maybe just a line of code. So you sometimes you go back if you want to keep that updated, of course. But it's I always see also my own content. Sometimes also change some thumbnails of the videos. Never happy, by the way. I change something, I change the description. So the content is alive itself. It needs to be updated if you want to dedicate some time to that. So I always see my content like that because I know some people. I were one of them. Like they crave perfection. Like I want to make the perfect, and then they never do that. So sometimes I feel bad because I was I was exactly that kind of person. But then one day I decided just to start and then see what happened. So thank you, Ali. Would you like to give maybe a final message usually at the end, like especially for people to get started, some motivation? Thank you so much. You really shared a lot of knowledge. I hope that this will not be the last time that we collaborate. So yes,
Yeah,
what can
totally.
we say? I see some people are really cheering for you. Thanks, and a lot of other stuff. Amazing.
Awesome, awesome. I think I'll end it where we started and say that if you're struggling, that's where you should be when you're learning. It shouldn't feel easy. And so stick with it. You got this and keep going, keep learning and keep growing. That's the important part.
Nice, perfect, perfect. I like that, Alessandro. Almost too late. I know this is why we do this on YouTube, and this is also recorded, so you know what to do now. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Cool.
much, Ellie. This has been great. I think we agree on many different points. I always have a special feeling with teachers because I have like a total background with teaching. So for me, it's a very important topic. Like
Yeah,
for me,
same.
teaching has been way before being active on social media.
Yeah,
I always loved to teach to people, and I don't know.
yeah.
There is something I don't know magic when you can transfer your knowledge to someone who doesn't know that. So I don't know. I feel this maybe in a different way than some other people can feel that, and I really feel very good when I try to I don't know let people understand what I say. So it's a good sensation. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
awesome, awesome. And not to be too self-pluggy, but I do have blog posts about teaching, learning, and content creation and blog posts. So if you want to check those out, it could be a good extension of what we chatted about here too.
Nice. And I've also been fast enough that here is the I think it is here in on your website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Nice.
That one's my, like, portfolio site, and then welearncode.com is my where my
Okay.
blog posts live.
Nice, nice, perfect. Okay, perfect. So finally, now the puzzle is complete because I've had Ellie already 2 times. We've talked with other guests, other amazing guests. Then we've talked about AWS, but finally now I know a little bit more about her story, her background. We have talked about this incredible topic. So yes, perfect. We are done, Ellie. Thank you,
Well,
Yash. It was a
thanks so
really
much.
great discussion. And yes, maybe one day we will meet. I've been kind of close to. It was I can't remember when it was the Amazon live
Oh,
event.
reInvent this fall,
I
yeah.
was close because I was in San Francisco in that period, but it was still too far. So next time,
Yeah, next time.
one day. Perfect. Okay,
Cool.
amazing.
Alright.
Perfect. We are
Thanks.
done. Okay. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye, everyone. Bye bye.